Hey, Sam is my next guest on the Nourish Soul podcast, and Sam is an integrative health coach. And I think we connected through Instagram. I'm not 100% sure exactly how we connected, but I just love Samantha's approach and her perspective on things, particularly around mental health. So she shares a bit about her journey, which is great. We both talk a little bit about quantum health and quantum health strategies. Sam lives these strategies. So as she's just learning more and more about quantum health and quantum health strategies and quantum biology, she's already living it. And so I really wanted I wanted to have her on the show so you could hear her talk about that. In case you're interested, she talks a little bit about how she was an athlete, just like a star student, star athlete. And you might be wondering, well, what kind of athletics did she do? Well, I forgot to ask her in the episode, but I did ask her. She grew up playing basketball and volleyball, which is not surprising growing up in California. But then she played club lacrosse in college and was really into weightlifting. So always has this kind of health perspective, but through an athlete's eyes, right? That athletic lens. So I hope that you enjoy this episode as much as I enjoy talking to Samantha. Samantha, I'm so excited to talk to you. Welcome to the Nurse Soul podcast.
Hi, Kelly. Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here.
Well, I know, I don't know, probably a month or so ago, I don't know, but I saw one of your posts and it was about mental health, but this place of being gentle with ourselves. And we want to make sure that we're gentle and we're kind to ourselves at the same time pushing ourselves. So that place of kind of knowing when we need to be gentle and kind and compassionate to ourselves, which is probably all the time, but then when we need to push ourselves and say, okay, you're going to feel a lot better if you get yourself up, you get outside, those kinds of things. So I wanted to talk about that. But before we kind of go into that, tell me a little bit more about your health journey and kind of where you are now.
I'd love to. I have a long health journey, so I'm going to condense it as best as I can. But pretty much, I was very healthy as a kid and a teen, never had any major health issues. It really wasn't until I was in college and I went to a school way different than where I grew up. I grew up in Southern California and I went to a Baptist school in the South. I had never been to the South before, so it was quite a culture shock.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't know what half the things in the cafeteria were. But so it was definitely a big adjustment for me emotionally. I didn't make friends as easily as I used to. I was just very new and felt very vulnerable. And that kind of kickstarted major stress and feeling like an outcast. And I started to experience pretty severe anxiety and depression for the first time. I was also very hard on myself in school. I was a highly competitive athlete most of my life. So in working out, anything that could drive success, I was very hard on myself with. And I pretty much had a very loud inner critic and a big bully inside of myself. And that's how I was successful, is by bullying myself into success, basically.
So achievement oriented. And so
Yeah.
success in terms of achievement, maybe, but not so
Right.
successful in feeling good along those.
100%. Yeah. I saw success as, good grades. I'll get a great job. I'm super fit, hitting fitness goals, very objective things.
Yeah.
But at a very high price of health. Kind of just started to feel that anxiety and depression come on. And as time went on, it started to manifest into physical symptoms. So I started having awful gut problems like GERD, IBS, SIBO. I had candida overgrowth.
Yeah.
It was so severe, my gut issues, where I was pretty much vomiting every day in between classes. Couldn't keep any food down. I had to eat really bland foods. And then I started to get injuries more than usual. My shoulder, I got an injury. My knee, I had a very awful knee injury that really just kind of came out of nowhere. And I kind of, one of the big catalysts was actually at the end of my college experience. I was hospitalized with pancreatitis. And that was wild because many of my other health issues, I saw tons of doctors, got tons of labs done, ultrasounds, endoscopies, procedures, tests. And almost every time it was, oh, your labs are normal, or this test is normal, or oh, you're pretty okay. And with that pancreatitis in the hospital, they basically said, we don't know what caused this. Like your gallbladder's fine. You don't have an issue with your liver with alcohol. And those are kind of the main things that would cause something like this. And you're fine. So we don't know what happened. And it was just wild because I was like, I feel crazy. I feel like my body's just giving out on me, but apparently I'm fine because all these test results are showing nothing. And I felt so hopeless, and I felt like the world was punishing me and I didn't know why. And it really wasn't until my health journey into holistic health started until I saw a gastroenterologist who's probably like, God, like the seventh gastroenterologist I had seen in like a year. And he was looking at all my labs. I'm still having awful symptoms. And he looks at my labs and he goes, you're everything's normal. Are you stressed? Are you unhappy? And I remember feeling so offended. I was so frustrated because I was like, I'm sick all the time. I'm exhausted. I'm depressed. I'm anxious. I have all these health issues. People think I'm crazy. Like, of course I'm stressed. What are you talking about? And he kind of alluded to the fact that, I think you're perpetuating these issues with your mindset and your stress management. And that was the first time I had heard that from someone, and I didn't really digest that until probably a year after that.
Right.
So
Right.
that kind of kickstarted me looking into other ways of healing besides going to the doctor, getting labs done, and trying to find some objective, symptom cause, and finally looking deeper of what's really causing these problems. And from there, I just started diving into the world of nutrition. I got really into nutrition. I did so many different types of therapy, finally learned what the inner critic is, finally understood that my mind has so much power over my body, and finally learning the mind, body, soul connection. And yes, I've spent kind of the past 10 years going down that whole route of health, and that's helped tremendously.
Right. Yeah. So I hear this a lot. This is, fortunately, it's sort of the route a lot of people. Well, would you have said at the time, I am really anxious? Did you feel like an anxious person? Would you have said that? Or is it looking back, you realize that depression and anxiety were hanging out with you?
I think it actually wasn't until I went to my doctor and they were like, oh, it sounds like you have severe depression. It sounds like you have severe anxiety. And that kind of is what initially turned me on, like, oh, this isn't normal. Like the way I'm feeling is, oh, I shouldn't be miserable every day. Oh, weird. Like, so it wasn't until, I had doctors start prescribing me like psych meds and then going to therapy of where I realized it wasn't normal. And then, yes, I did internally started to feel very anxious and depressed.
Okay. Yeah.
So
And I guess what I'm asking is for that reason, because a lot of us anxious folks are sort of that type A. We just like to do things well. We're used to doing things well. And I don't think we necessarily realize how anxious we are and how depression and anxiety tend to hang out together. They're buds until at some point we start to feel better and realize how anxious and how depressed we have been. And so then you can kind of put your mind around it. But sometimes it's all, it's happening when it's happening, and other people, but the digestion goes with mental health. Like where there are mental health issues, there are almost always digestive issues. Like I find that over and over and over again. And that same sort of SIBO, or IBS is huge. And then the candida overgrowth is sort of like a given. I don't know that many young adults that don't have some candida overgrowth. Like it's so prevalent, and most people don't realize that that has anything to do with their mental health. They don't realize that their gut and their brain are, I mean, I think people are starting to realize that's connected, but I don't think that they realize how much that influences your gut, influences your mental health, and
Totally.
really vice versa, I guess, right?
Totally. Yeah, it was a big like learning experience for me, just realizing that I'm perpetuating, these issues. I'm not slowing down for meals. I'm eating in a rush. I am in a super stressed out state when I'm eating. I am not breathing properly, so my nervous system is not in a rest and digest state. And it's like, of course, these foods are not going to be properly absorbed when I'm in such a fight or flight, tensed up state. But I didn't know any of that. I just was kind of going to, yeah, to all these gastroenterologists who were just basically saying, you're fine, like here's some acid blockers. And I do think there's a time and place for conventional medicine, but I don't think that was what was right for me. They really, except that one that I saw who actually asked me about my mental health. But yeah, I actually had a huge turning point with the gut brain connection when I went gluten-free, actually, a few years later. And I had eaten bread my whole life. I had eaten pasta. My mom makes amazing pasta, so like I never had any issues really digesting it. But I saw a holistic practitioner a few years later, and they suggested cutting it out, and I was like, I'll give it a shot. It was kind of trendy at the time. So I was like, oh, great. I'm going to be one of those annoying gluten-free girls now. But after 6 weeks, like my chronic fatigue syndrome went away, and my depression didn't completely go away, but I finally had the energy to actually take care of myself. I finally had energy to really devote time to healing. And because I think one of the difficult parts of mental health is the energy aspect. Like when you're so anxious and depressed, you have no energy to, yeah, make those appointments for therapy, or to go to the gym, or to cook yourself these nutrient dense meals, or to read, different journals or whatever. So getting just that little bit of energy from changing my diet and feeling lighter just from that one change was kind of my first introduction to, yeah, that gut brain connection. I was like, wow, this is powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the gluten-free girl here. I too, but I had a really hard time um with not feeling sorry for myself. I don't know how else to say that. Like I was like, other people can have it. I want to have, like I just didn't want to be gluten-free. And then once you feel so much better and so much lighter, you're like, okay, this is not a big deal. It's not hard to give it up if I'm going to feel this much better. And I think you're absolutely right about energy. So anything you can do to help have the energy to be able to do the deeper healing. And that's where I spend most of my time now, is helping people with the energy, not just with food, with also the quantum stuff, which you seem to know a lot about quantum biology. I don't know if you've studied it, but your posts are very oriented to sunlight and circadian rhythm and all of the things being connected to our food, regenerative farming. Like it seems like you have already clued in around quantum biology, but I'm not sure if you if you're trying to be that, or if you studied it or what.
Yeah, I will say I'm newer to the formal studying of it. I feel like I've been practicing it without realizing
Yes,
it.
that's what I thought. Yeah.
I'm definitely like a sun worshiper. I've been like that my whole life. I love being out in the sun. I feel amazing when I get sunshine. I feel terrible when I don't, or when I'm just not outside.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I think, and I grew up hiking and camping, so I think I already felt good being in nature, being more connected in nature that way. But it wasn't really until this past year where I came across people like Dr. Jack Cruz and the Quantum Health, podcast, where I was like, oh my gosh, this is a way bigger deal than I even realized consciously. And I feel like a lot of people on health journeys, I think I've heard you talk about this of, we get so into the biohacking and the supplements, and I need to have the most strict nutrition ever, and I need to do all of these things to feel good. And they might all be natural, they might all be really positive, but a big motto of mine lately has just been, it's really going back to basics and going back to nature with like quantum health. And that's what's going to yield the best energy, is kind of going back to, just the sunlight, really high quality water, nutrient dense seasonal food, and community, other things too, but really just honing in on that core is, I feel like, quantum health too.
Yeah. I don't know why I got the sense that you were like me. I guess because I was like, oh, Samantha's like me. I was doing a lot of the things before I knew the science. And then when you start to realize the science, you're like, oh, okay, that's why that feels so good. Or that's why I've been leaning towards getting in nature. I mean, nature is a safety signal to our nervous system. So, whatever ways we can get in nature, be around nature, even just images of nature are super helpful. But you live in Hawaii now, right? Are you
I
back in, are you
So I
out?
kind of bounce around, but yes, I will be. I'm about to be back in Hawaii on the Big Island. I'm in California right now, but I'll be in Hawaii for a regenerative ag apprenticeship about a week. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, tell me about it. That's because you've done some really cool things in your process of healing and then ended up in some really interesting jobs.
Yeah, it's definitely been a roller coaster journey and self-discovery. But yeah, I was in corporate America for God, 5, 6 years. I hated it. It just felt like my soul was being sucked out of my body every day. And I just, during the pandemic, like a lot of people, felt I need to make a change, I need to shift. And I had always been passionate about nutrition from a holistic health standpoint, but I didn't really know like where my food came from, or what is nutrient dense food. What does that really mean? Like, and when I started to actually learn about how important farming methods are, not just for, my tomato tastes a little bit better. This is so much more nutrient dense, and it will impact my body on such a substantial molecular level, and it'll enhance my energy. And I'm absorbing the energy from this, food that's grown properly. And when I started to learn about that, I was like, I want to get into this. This is so key. And especially learning about soil health too. Soil health is like just the root of so much health issues in our society. So yeah, I kind of left the corporate world, did a different farm internship at a coffee farm, and learned a lot. It was definitely an eye-opening experience, slowing down from city corporate life to working on a farm. It was actually difficult at times. The slowing down, I found myself crying a lot. I found myself just really emotional because I was just in nature and undistracted all the time. And that was, at the time, I was a little worried. I was like, oh gosh, is my mental health getting bad? What's going on? But now I look back and I'm like, oh, like I needed that processing, and I needed to really get immersed back in nature again and truly slow down. And I feel like I released a lot of deep trauma that was inside of me that kind of was still there, even through all the work I had been doing. So I learned a lot on that farm, but then I wanted to do more of a specialty in like vegetables and agroforestry and fruits. So that's why I'm about to embark on this new regenerative ag opportunity, where this particular farm provides a lot of the food for food banks, farmers markets, and they do a lot of education around why regenerative ag is so important for communities in the world and our health and our spiritual health, and just connecting everyone back to nature. So
Yeah. And for people who are listening that maybe are like, what is regenerative ag? What are they talking about? I think most people will know, but just in case they don't, let's just tell people what's the difference between regenerative farming and kind of other kinds of regular farming.
Yeah, absolutely. So pretty much regenerative farming is a way of farming. I kind of think of it as it's the way that our world was created to make food. Conventional farming is very much, it's not natural. There's a lot of chemical usage. It's a lot of monocropping, which is provide one crop at a time over large areas, which is not natural. It's taking livestock out of the element. It is not the natural order of how food should be grown, whereas regenerative it's using animals manure as the fertilizer, it's using trees as crop covers, it is having a biodiversity of different foods, and it's really focusing on seasonal production too. We're not, I think we forget in the store, we're really not meant to have all these foods all the time. It's a lot of unnatural processing to get us all these foods. And so it's really taking it back to enhancing the ecosystem through this farming method, whereas conventional farming is we're really stripping the ecosystem to get what we want. That's kind of a general overview. It's very dense, but it's crazy because learning about regenerative ag actually it's almost like a spiritual experience, because when I'm learning about how connected everything is in nature, it's like our bodies too. Like everything is connected, everything is energy. There's energy in the soil, there's energy in our food, there's energy in the water. And when we start messing with it in unnatural ways, it can create dysfunction. Just like our bodies, if we start messing with our bodies in these unnatural ways, it's going to create dysfunction and low energy.
Exactly.
So
That's
it's all
exactly
connected.
it is. But Samantha, looking back to when things started falling apart for you, knowing what you know now, I mean, what would we tell young adults that are feeling so out of sorts? I mean, community's huge. So obviously you came to the South. Welcome to the South. Yeah. Woo. I mean, I've grown up in the South, so but I know what you're talking about. It's just a complete culture change. But being so out of touch with nature, we are nature. So I'm
Yeah.
just wondering, like, what are your thoughts about that? Like, looking back, what do you think might have been helpful, and how out of touch with nature were you at that time, do you think?
Yeah, I think I mean I've grown up always enjoying being outside, so I think I thought I was in touch with nature,
Right.
but but I feel like I wasn't present in nature. I wasn't really absorbing it. Like I was like, I'm gonna go on a hike because it's exercise and it's good for me. Like, but that was kind of it. And I think really learning about how us and nature function as one, like learning about that, and has really opened my eyes, because I did look at it as kind of separate, especially working in corporate America where, it's buildings everywhere and we go walk to our patch of grass, 3 blocks away for lunch or whatever. So it does feel so separate. So I think removing yourself and being immersed in nature for periods of time is very helpful. It doesn't have to be your entire life. You don't have to be remote and off grid forever. But I think, really being still and in silence, not listening to music, not listening to a podcast, but just using experiences like that in nature, I think that's when you really start to feel like I am one with this. This is really a part of me and I'm a part of it. And I think you just feel connected that way. And in terms of for young people, it's really hard because we're so, digital now. And I think and as digital, and also I think artificial, like things are becoming more and more artificial or man-made, and not everything digital or artificial is bad, but I think reminding people of how the universe was created and how you were created, like reminds you that nature creates, and if we give ourselves the right environment to thrive, we will naturally thrive. Like you don't need all of these artificial things to thrive. But to get to that spot, I think you do need to be in a place of stillness and slowing down. And I think that's a big thing that for young people, especially speaking to my younger self, like I did not slow down like until my body forced me to, basically.
Which is what happens. And I feel like it's happening younger and younger. So that used to happen, like people would break down in their 30s and have these kind of, their body would say no more. And it feels like it's coming earlier and earlier for people. I'm not sure, I might be making that up. But I do think it's really difficult when everybody wants freedom. Like, yes, I want freedom. But when you actually experience freedom, it's quite disorienting. And the quiet and the still and the slowing down can actually be quite uncomfortable. And
Mhm.
so I love that you're talking about that. I love that you're you're posting about that, you're talking about it, you're on podcast, because I think that people think they're going crazy sometimes when their bodies when you're safe enough to start healing, sometimes you're going to feel uncomfortable. Your nervous system will start releasing things out and it will not feel great. But there is a difference in really being in that anxious, depressed, miserable state, and in the state of things are shifting and your nervous system is now able to let some things up. The way they bubble up, I think, I don't, you can tell me if this was different for you, but there is the sense that you're actually okay, but that something's up, but you're actually okay.
Yeah, no, I definitely have felt that. And I think a big part of my earlier mental health struggles was the feelings, the negative feelings, the intrusive thoughts, the doubts they were so intense that I was like, I'm gonna die. Like these feelings are so intense, they're going to kill me. I can't handle them. And as I progress through my mental health journey, I have just learned about how, or at least I believe now, that we were pretty much created to handle anything almost. Of course, there's certain things we can't control, like, accidents or something like that. But for the most part, I'd say, like, especially mentally, like, we are truly created to handle anything that life throws our way. And I think having that realization made me handle those negative emotions so much more. Like those negative emotions were still coming up, but I was in a place of like, oh, wait, I can handle these. I've been giving my power away of being able to handle these. Whereas I have some agency here. I can kind of face these feelings and talk to them and be like, hey, like, anxiety, what do you have to say today? Why are we acting this way today? Like, let's have a discussion, instead of just being afraid to feel negative. Because anxiety and depression, I think, are messages, like, to our body that are telling us something's off, whether it's in your environment, your work, your friends, your relationships. It could be all these things, hey, something's off and we need to fix it. And I think we just aren't good at interpreting those feelings. If we feel something negative, or like negative, bad, I need to get rid of that feeling. Whereas it's like, no, what's that feeling trying to tell you? And I think a big breakthrough for me is not numbing those out and not ignoring those, because I think initially in my healing journey, I was like, I'm just going to get away from those feelings and put them over here and I'll be better. But really learning to embrace them and not numb them out with I don't know, exercise or even healthy coping mechanisms can numb out those feelings. So facing them head on has been transformational, but very scary too. It's not easy. And I often tell, people that I coach or help, like, it's not always easy and it can be very scary, but know that you were created to handle it and you are going to make it through, and you're going to have so much more knowledge of who you are after. The more you handle them and the more you face them, like the more you know yourself, and kind of the more strength you have to keep discovering just these messages your body's trying to tell you.
Could not agree more. Absolutely. I think that these are the messages. And the more you can say, hey, anxiety, What's up? Welcome to the party. I always say that. Welcome, like shame.
Yeah.
Like, welcome to the party, shame. Thanks for showing up. What's happening? I was like trying to shove it down or control it. I mean, I don't know about you, but I just had a little bit of a I still, I guess, have some control issues that I work on. Like, I like to be in control. And it's a different feeling when you're actually inviting these emotions in and realizing that all of this is important and helpful, and it's just guiding you. It's guiding you towards your own healing, your own life. Your life will continue to show up and in a way that you can handle it. Like, we are designed to heal. So if
Mhm.
we put ourselves in the best environment to do that, I think it's just confusing these days what to do and where to go and who to listen to. And that's why I really think your content is really fresh and poignant and right on. And so the work you're doing now, you are coaching people, right? That's in addition to doing some regenerative agriculture stuff, you're actually helping people on their health journey.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's it's almost like an alternative way too of helping people. I feel like in the work that you do and the work that I do, it's yeah, not kind of maybe the mainstream way of like, oh, you just go to therapy and maybe you have to be on medication and that works for someone, that's great, but I think there's a lot of people that doesn't work for them and they're just disconnected and whole society's way of viewing mental illness is not serving them. And I think it's so important for people like us to be discussing like our stories and what's worked for us, and especially the nature aspect, because it kills me when I talk to people who are struggling with mental health and they are not going outside till 12 p.m. They aren't they're eating, a really sugary breakfast, or they're just taking their medication. They're not, maybe they go to therapy, maybe they don't really have friends, and they're complaining that they don't feel good. And it's like, I want to get them out in the sun, get them mineral water, and just get them out in the grass for a little bit. Because I think we forget how simple it can be.
Yeah.
We overcomplicate it a lot.
We do. I just don't think people, and I like you, I guess I thought I was pretty connected to nature. Like, I go on hikes and I walked every single day for years with a friend out in the morning, like early morning before our kids would get up. We were out there. But I wasn't really present, like you said. I wasn't really consciously like, this is good for me. I wasn't even really engaged with the nature around me, like even just noticing the
Mhm.
flowers or the snow or whatever's going on next to you. And so that just consciously, I do think it helps to consciously, like you were saying, to learn that we are nature, and that we are meant to be in harmony with the nature, the natural environment around us. It actually helps us thrive. We cannot, nothing that's alive on this planet would be alive without the sun. Like, sunlight equals life. So for us to just like take that for granted, I think most people think, oh, well, yeah, I mean, daylight, they don't realize how much that is affecting everything that operates inside of our body. So,
Totally.
yes, it's simple, but I think we just don't realize until you realize. And then you're like, oh, okay. So, going outside before I look at my phone is actually helping my health, particularly my mental health.
Mhm.
Okay. And then
Yeah.
making a commitment to do that. Because I don't know how it's been for you, but you have to. I mean, this is what we started with. You have to take responsibility. You've got to own your own crap and say, okay, no one is coming. I keep hearing that over and over again as I interview people. It's like, I came to a realization that if I was going to heal, I was going to have to do this myself. I'm like going to have to heal on my own. That there have been, it sounds like a few were helpful, like some therapy, and certainly the gastro guy that said, how's your stress? Like, you're like, it's awful. What are you talking about? Why do I have these problems? It's like, because you're stressed, and stress is really important in the whole picture. Yeah. So, I mean, I think all of that has been helpful on your journey. And I'm going
Hmm.
to shut up and let you talk for a minute and
Oh no,
respond to
I
that.
loved everything you were saying, and I just it reminded me of something I discovered on my health journey was, going back to you have to take ownership for your own health. And for the longest time, I looked at doctors as my saviors. And there were certainly some doctors that helped me a lot. And I'm really thankful for those particular ones. But I was outsourcing my healing to someone else. I was outsourcing my healing power and energy to someone who's only spending 10 minutes with me in a room, who is just going to prescribe me something for a symptom. And I don't guilt myself for acting that way, because that's how we're like, grown. That's how we grow up in our society is, oh, if you're sick or you don't feel good, you go to the doctor and they fix you. Like, there's no point of where we are taught, you listen to your body. What is your body really telling you? What do you think these symptoms are indicating? Do your own research, talk to other people, things like that. So yeah, I think for me, realizing my frustration with these doctors was, oh, I'm responsible for my own health, and I need to find out where these symptoms are coming from. What are they telling me? How can I heal them? And how can I learn from them? And that was a huge turning point for me, was just not being reliant on the conventional medical system as much, because it really wasn't getting to any root emotional issues for me. And everyone's so different. And I know everyone says that all the time, but it's just crazy to me. Like, we are really all so unique in what we need, and no one can tell you exactly what you need. You have to come to that place on your own, and that's not easy. It takes a lot of self-knowing and stillness, and sometimes meditation, or just discovering yourself. But yeah, I just wanted to comment on that. Taking that ownership of your healing is so crucial. And I think people are afraid to do that because they're like, I'm not a doctor, I don't know everything. And it's like, you don't have to know everything about the body. You really just need to feel in your body when you're out in nature, or when you're in stressful situations, feel into yourself and kind of just, piece it together that way. And it takes a long time to do that, but it's so worth it.
It does. And that it does take time, but it should take time, because if you're trying to do it too quickly, well, you can't.
Yeah.
We can only metabolize, we're able to metabolize at the time. And so it does take time, because your nervous system has to learn. Most of us have to relearn how to not be in the constant stress response. So our cells are in this danger response too. So it takes some time to repair all that. I think people can feel better pretty quickly. It's not that you can't have some relief quickly, but like deep healing takes time. So for you, like, I really love the way that you talk about this balance between being kind to yourself and pushing yourself. How did you come to that? Was it just, are you still coming to that? How is that for you?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up again. So I think been a I think I've merged all my different personalities to come to that. So, for a long time it was just a very difficult inner critic I dealt with, especially in college and in my earlier 20s. So I kind of envision it as like I was a really, really mean coach, one that never let you get water, never let you took a break. If you sprained your ankle, it doesn't matter, you're still running. So that was that extreme over here. And then as I started my healing journey, I found that being gentle with myself, like being a little too soft or too gentle, almost made me a little too lazy or careless. And being early positive was kind of bypassing some of the negative feelings. So
Mm.
then I got a little over here where it was a little too gentle, a little too, yeah, comfortable, I'd say. So I
Comfortable. That's a
wasn't
good word.
growing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I kind of I feel like I had moments where I was like, okay, like I'm not gonna be this insane bully and mean coach to myself, but I'm also not gonna, sit in a burrito blanket on the couch all day. So where's the middle here? And I think learning again what was right for me was feeling my energy for the day and feeling, okay, I'm gonna go on a walk no matter what. Like I love walking in the morning and getting sun. That's one of my favorite mental health things to do. And I do that no matter what, but I gauge my energy. So it's like if I'm not feeling amazing that day, like maybe it's just a 10-minute walk. Whereas the days I'm, feeling more energetic and more, capable, I'll do an hour, right? Or, whatever. So I think it's understanding what I need to do to feel good, but then, just customizing it for that day, if that makes sense.
Yeah, being flexible, given
Right.
how you're actually feeling. Like that interoception is what we call it in trauma work. But like this interior, really going inward, knowing what's happening sensationally and what you're feeling on the inside is really helpful. And then being flexible around that. So you're not necessarily rigid, like, no, you're going that critic. I like the coach. That's a great analogy for that. Like the really harsh, mean coach. But you also don't want to be too soft on yourself because then you don't get anything done. I don't mean, I think that's my old self to actually talking like, let's get some stuff done. I don't mean
Yeah.
it like that. You know what I mean? I mean,
You don't like grow as much or
you don't.
improve.
Well, and
Yeah.
being outside for a walk, I really prioritize UVA light. So
Mhm.
UVA light, which is about an hour after sunrise and about an hour before sunset. So if you can find a time to be outside during that time, it's the most related to mood and our focus. So it's most related to mental health to be out during that time. So if I can do 5 minutes, only 5 minutes, then I do that. But
Mhm.
if I feel that's a great time to be out longer, if you can. So I like that balance of like, okay, I'm going no matter what. And I think you've got to make certain decisions, whatever that is for you. Like, I'm going to eat whole real food no matter what. Or I'm going to take a walk, or I'm going to go straight outside as soon as I wake up, no matter what. Whether you feel like it, you don't feel like it, you want to, you don't, you believe it, you don't believe it, like you just do it. You've made the commitment that this is part of my healing and I'm doing it. And then you're flexible around how much of that, how long of that, you can be
Yeah.
flexible, right?
I
Given
think
how
it's
you
a
feel.
lot of experimenting too, like I like to experiment on myself, I guess, with health things because yeah, what works for someone might not work for someone else. So it's, trying different things like maybe I'm a big believer in trying things for a while, like several weeks, in a couple months, because that way you can really feel the effects, but knowing like you can change at any time. So if I decide I want to cold plunge every other day for 2 months, maybe that'll make me feel amazing. And you do it and it doesn't make you feel amazing and you feel terrible. It's like, okay, let's change it up. Let's try it once a week, or
Back
maybe
it
we
up.
don't do those, and it's giving yourself the grace and the room to experiment and try and then sit and feel how is this working for me? Like, is this something I can sustain? And I think when you find things that do work for you, committing and being a little bit more rigid is important with those. Like you said, with the walk, like, yeah, like I'd have to be bedridden to like not get my morning sun, but that's something that is worth it for me because I feel infinitely better.
Yeah, I'm the same. Well, but it was rough. I just was in England and it was 4:40 a.m. was the sunrise and I didn't make it. I
Oh,
did not. I could get up about 5 a.m. and go open a window and basically put my face in the window because I was so tired. Get up closer to like 7 and go outside barefoot, and I still did all my things, but still, like sometimes you have to be flexible even though you're committed. So I love that you're saying that. And I think, for the people that you work with and that I'm just thinking about the people that I work with, there is something that happens when you make a commitment to your own healing. Like, I think if I had to really pull the thread, like what is it that really helps people? Because everyone makes it in their own way. Some people start with food, some people start with, I don't know, sunlight, some people start with other things. It's the common thread is this like coming to a place where you're really committed to your own healing,
Mhm.
whatever that means.
Totally. It's so important, and believing that you can heal is
Yeah.
so crucial and instrumental. And I didn't believe I could heal for a long time. It was just health issue after health issue, panic attack after panic attack. So, of course I wasn't believing that I could heal, but the believing that I could heal was the missing piece, ironically. And so believing that you can get better despite the circumstances is like huge change. And just even opening, or you don't even have to 100% believe it, but opening yourself up to the possibility, maybe I can heal, like maybe I can feel 1% better tomorrow, maybe. And I'd love to get that maybe to an affirmative yes, but even just starting with that, I've found with people close to me, that's been so helpful. Or they needed someone to tell them, hey, you're going to heal. Like, whereas I think a lot of medical professionals have to be so careful about absolutes. And like, I found with even therapists and doctors, they don't ever say like, you're going to get better. Yeah, I believe it. They're kind of like, oh, we'll try this, maybe, we'll see. And I understand why they have to do that, but sometimes you need someone with an affirmative, like just complete confidence in you to say, hey, you're gonna get better. Maybe not tomorrow, like maybe not for several months, like, but it's going to happen. And just even being open to that is healing.
I agree. Absolutely. Just being open to it. Do you remember when that happened for you? Do you remember was it slow? I'm trying to
It
remember for myself, like, where was as I think that's what people want to know, like, where's the turning point? And I think for a lot of us, it was like there really wasn't another choice. Like, we'd already been down the medical route, and we were at the end of the medical route. Like, this is not working. So if I'm going to get better, it's not going to be that way. And so you get so desperate that there's almost like no other way but to be open because you're
Mhm.
obviously still alive. So it's like, I
Yeah.
must be alive for a reason. What is going on here? But I don't really remember like a turning point um, for me. Do you have some thoughts about that?
I don't remember. Yeah, I don't remember a very specific moment, but I totally resonate with I'm at my rock bottom, and I don't really have another choice but to believe in healing because if I don't, I'm probably just going to stay like this forever or eventually die because there's really no other way out. I have so many health issues. I have no energy. So yeah, it was almost, it was the desperation, I think, for
I
me
do
that
think it's
forced me.
yeah.
And I think that's on purpose. Like I used to look back and think, oh, God's punishing me, the universe is punishing me. But I think it was just sending me all these signals that I was just not paying attention to. And I was like just ignoring them and not understanding them and not taking the time to listen to them until they were like, okay, we got to send in the big ones because she's not paying attention. And I think that was a huge part. But I do remember listening to like Kelly Brogan, but I do remember a long time ago listening to a podcast of hers, and that was a turning point for me in terms of there are other ways to heal besides the conventional system. Like she was the first person I heard say, like you can change your mental state whenever you want. And I remember hearing it being like, no way, like I'm not choosing to be depressed. I'm not choosing to be anxious. It's crazy. But she talked a lot about nutrition and like the choices you make in your lifestyle, that is you choosing to be, mentally well or happy. And that really impacted me and made me kind of take more ownership of like, oh, I have some agency here. I can make different decisions. I don't have to just rely on this one system over here. I can do research. I can kind of explore other options. That was my first, like, there's other options out there.
Yeah. I love that it was a podcast because I think you never know who you're helping when you share these stories. So I'm so glad that we're doing it and that we got to connect and share. Is there anything else that we missed that you really wanted to say? Anything else about mind, body, soul?
I think I think we covered so many amazing things, but I think just one thing that has really helped me is, yeah, realizing my physical symptoms are not separate from my emotional, my soul. We're all one, and it's all messages that are trying to talk to us. So just being open to listening to those messages, even if they're uncomfortable or scary, it's, so important to make space to invite those in, try to figure out what they're telling you, and, trust that these messages are being sent to you for a reason. You were created to handle anything. So, let's flow with it and see where it goes. That helped me a lot, just learning how to flow a little bit better with the messages.
Yeah, well, trust. We could probably do a whole nother podcast, just conversation about trust and because that's always been really challenging for most people. It's challenging for me as to trust that.
Totally.
I really think that the opposite of anxiety is not peace, it's trust. Like,
Mm,
if we trust whatever it is, like our life or life force energy or universe or God, all of it, the more we can trust, the more really our life, then the more that it will flow in a way. You can have more flow. But I think that's really challenging for a lot of us.
yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. I didn't trust myself for the longest time, and it manifested, in anxiety and physical symptoms. So, and I think when you trust that it's going to be okay, it's acknowledging that there's still going to be hardships. You're still going to have bad days. You're still going to struggle. Life is not going to stop obstacles, even if you're trusting, but it makes it easier to overcome them because you know that you will overcome them because you were designed to do that. And I think a big part of when I realized I was really healing was when I found that my obstacles in life had not changed, but I wasn't like freaking out about them as much. Like
Yeah.
my circumstances, I remember a couple of years ago, my circumstances were still kind of troublesome to me, but I was waking up like just feeling like, oh, like I'll get through them, I'll make it through, I'll handle them. And it's just realizing nothing in the external had changed. It was all internal. And that was just more reaffirming of, the world is always going to have crazy obstacles and so much. There's going to be evil, there's going to be bad things. But if the more we work on our internal self, the more we can kind of, navigate those and just feel better.
Yeah. And actually feel energized and grounded and clear because you don't know what's coming. So
Yeah.
I could not agree more. That has been my experience, truly. Yeah. I just wondered, I mean, we've talked a lot about what I feel like is nourishing to your soul. And I really appreciate that you were like, I knew I was really healing when my life hadn't changed, but I had a different response to it. Yeah, I was just feeling different, especially when you wake up. There's something different when you wake up and you're more like, okay, let's get it. And it's not different than when you felt awful, the circumstances, the same people, the same jobs, that kind of thing. And they do shift. I think that's important. They do shift when you realize that something is toxic or not good, you can make those shifts. But for you, is there anything else that's really nourishing specifically to your soul that you felt like is a soul path to the whole?
I'm still working on a lot of soul work, but a little specific, but I think getting really in touch with my breath has been a huge element of getting more in touch with my soul. And I didn't think it would. I tried breath work intermittently for a long time and it just didn't really, I wasn't doing it properly. But finally learning how to do proper breath work and deep breathing, it brings me to a different state of Sam where I feel just very held by the universe. I feel very confident in myself. And when you're just focusing on such a core process of just breathing, my soul, I feel like that has the stillness to talk to me or to make me feel better or trust in, the process and things like that. I know we could go on about breath work, but yeah, that was another element that really helped me, was just breathing really got me in touch with my soul and spirituality a lot.
Yeah. Well, and it's so practicing, I think a couple points. When you practice something kind of intermittently because you feel like it should be helpful, not one, it either could be just not the right timing. So it still could be a great tool, like, EFT tapping or breath work or meditation. Sometimes people need to do some nervous system work before they can meditate because they're actually bypassing, like we were talking about. You can bypass positivity, can bypass some of the things that are really important for your own healing. So there's the bypass, but there's that piece that might not be the right timing, but also we might not be doing it correctly. Like we might have wrong information. So for you, did you go do breath work training? Like how did you realize that you weren't doing the breath work correctly?
I just like anyone, I just started with a bunch of YouTube videos, but then I'm really lucky and I have friends that are yoga teachers and meditation teachers. So I really learned from them the proper diaphragm, belly breathing, different types of breathing, really harnessing like the prana and things like that. So I think learning from others in classes is so helpful. I think there are some trusted, videos you can watch online, but noticing, the difference in deep belly breathing versus the shallow chest breathing was so powerful to me. And I think breath work even like enhanced my spirituality too, of just feeling really in my body and just not feeling like of this world for a moment, like feeling like a soul, if that makes sense, like feeling just sensation and feeling this calmness and forgetting where I am sometimes. I come out of a breath work or meditation, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm in my house, I forgot. So and then it sets me up for the rest of the day, just calm, focused, collected. And if I need to get stressed, I do a little bit of breath work and it'll kind of just reignite, that sense of just feeling, yeah, like that trusting feeling of things are going to flow as they're supposed to flow, and I will handle whatever it is that happens.
Yeah, I know. My motto all year this past year was we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. But I think
Yeah.
what I meant was whatever's coming, we'll handle it. We'll handle it. Like what else? What's the choice? Like, yeah, falling apart doesn't work out real well. So, and sometimes you got to fall apart to be able to, I'm not knocking that. We're all in our own journey. But I do think that that makes a big difference. I like breath work a lot, like a lot of these tools. So I think practicing different things to see what resonates with you. And I think the more you can learn in a community, the better. So yeah, I'm really excited to see your next piece, the next journey. I'll be watching to see like what all you're into and when you're back in Hawaii. When do you go back?
I go back in like a week. So yeah, in about a week, I'll be living in a yurt and outside pretty much every day. And I'm very excited to step out my door and just step in a grass. That is going to be so amazing. And being in the sun all day. It's also like a low EMF farm. So they turn the Wi-Fi off a lot, which is a whole other thing that I know you're very, passionate about. And yeah, so I'm excited to have another period of stillness and real connection with nature where it's really just me, nature, the food we're growing, and then a really awesome group of people that care about regenerative ag and care about, creating food the way it's supposed to be created and enhancing, the ecosystem throughout that. So I'm very excited. I'm sure it'll be just another like roller coaster of emotions, being in touch with just nature during that time, but I'm looking forward to processing through all those as well.
Yeah. How long what's this next adventure? Do you have a time?
Yeah, it's 6 months.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's awesome. I
Yeah.
think because all of a sudden I was like, for how long? But I noticed that that's kind of what comes up is like, I can do this for a period of time and then we'll see if I could.
Mhm.
But I think it's a great opportunity. I'm really excited for you. And when you have time and you have Wi-Fi to post, I'll be excited to see what's happening.
Yeah, I want to do a lot more in the quantum health field. I've been following you and your work and then just the quantum health podcast. Like I'm so infatuated, more of just the basic human stuff. That's like my tag. And I really believe that it's really just getting back to the core, human ancestral elements is going to make us feel so much better and connected to each other and the world and nature and everything. So
You're already there. That's what's exciting. It's like you already
yeah.
live it. So the more like you're learning, and I think there's a time to learn and a time to just stop and be guided internally and then
Mhm.
reemerge back and just see what you're interested in the next piece. But I think it's going to be fun for you to see, like, I already know this. I already do this. This is already who I am. Like,
Yeah,
it just
totally.
is who you are. So I think you'll like the more, and then, I mean, once you get a taste of quantum biology, like, yeah, there's no going back.
No.
Yeah, right. There's
Once
the,
I started learning about it, I sent all these podcasts like everyone I knew and I was like, see, this is why I'm obsessed with the sun. Like this is why I can't get enough of it. Here's the science behind it.
yeah, yeah. Awesome. Well, Samantha, Sam, do you go by Sam mostly?
Either or.
Either or, yeah. Well, it was been so fun to talk to you. I'm so grateful that you took some time to be on the podcast, and you're just going to have to come back in a bit and tell us what all you learned about yourself and emotions and silence and generative ag and all that.
Yes. Ugh, I'm so excited. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I love everything that you post and all your work and you have such a like comforting tone and I love the way that you express things. So it really resonates with me. So I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
I appreciate that.